Thank you, Diane, for sharing our scripture lesson this morning. And I think it's always special when you get to read it from a Bible that is significant to you. I know I have my mother's Bible, and I'd like to take it out once in a while and look at all the different things that she underlined and little notes that she put in the corners of the pages. And it just speaks so much of her and in so many ways. And I want to thank the choir for that lovely piece. It just all dovetails so well with our message this morning. So let us just take a moment of silence as we just focus on God's call in our lives in this moment. Thank you. May our sharing together just enlighten us. I'm so grateful for this church, this community, especially in particularly challenging times. It's good to be here to support one another. Civility, security, trust, respect, compassion, dignity, grace, love, justice, hope, faith. I could go on. These qualities, these characteristics, these cherished qualities of humanity are in jeopardy today. They're very attributes of humankind that feed us and fuel us as human beings are deeply threatened in our society. I say this because when acts of violence happen, as we saw this week, the rhetoric, increasingly so, has become less about compassion and how we need to work together to stop these actions, but rather the trend is more about choosing sides and reinforcing division. The gap widens when it needs to come together. It is both a national and global tragedy. Society's moral compass is misaligned and pointing toward a self-destructive path. Now, I know that's really heavy stuff, and I don't usually talk like this. It is very doom and gloom, of which I tend not to be. But we simply can't put our heads in the sand either. This is real. And it needs us to pay attention and do what we can to change the compass direction toward what allows us to thrive as a humanity. And I believe that change is possible, otherwise I wouldn't even waste my time being here. And I believe also that sometimes it gets darker before the light begins to break through and shine with hope. I think that just is about where we are these days, and I urge you to hang in there and to hold on to one another, to keep your light shining. Don't let it go out. As Holocaust survivor Corrie ten Boom once said, when a train goes through a tunnel and it gets dark, you don't throw away the ticket and jump off. You sit still and trust the engineer. Trust the gift of God's presence in each of us that can find us working together to bring and be the change that gives opportunity, gives freedom, and gives a fair chance at prosperity to everyone. It takes work. It takes openness and an honest look at ourselves, how we might do things differently, how we might set aside judgment when the tendency arises in us to point a finger at someone else. It takes deepening our faith and striving toward greater understanding of what it means to live lives as followers of Jesus' example, for whom we come every week to learn from. Today's passage gives another look at what that means. So let us look more closely at it together. It starts with the religious leaders, the Pharisees and the scribes, judging Jesus for paying attention to those whom they deemed as unfit, as sinful people, like the tax collectors, who were notoriously taking money off the top and putting it in their own pockets as they went around and collected the taxes. The Pharisees and scribes were mumbling among themselves, criticizing Jesus for not only talking with these wayward people, but having the audacity to share a meal with them, to sit around a table, to eat together. A total violation of the religious law in that time. Now, either Jesus heard them mumbling or he suspected their thoughts. We don't know. But he takes the opportunity to tell them two stories, parables, if you will, with the message that he hopes would hit home. First, he tells a story of the shepherd who, having lost one of his sheep, leaves the 99 to themselves, knowing that there was protection in numbers. And he sets out to search for that one lost sheep. And he doesn't give up until he finds it. And when he does, he lifts it, and I think about this compassionate, loving act. He lifts it on his shoulders. And he carries it back to the flock, celebrating that what was lost is now found. The tenderness, the care, and deep compassion cannot be missed in the image that Jesus creates in sharing that story. The tenderness and love of God. Ted and I could share a similar story. When we were raising bison, we had a newborn calf that the mother rejected, and some of you may have heard this story. It took us 24 hours to actually find her and get her. She was rejected by her mom. It was too dangerous to go in among the herd to scoop her up and take her to safety. And that first evening, as it grew dark, we knew there was nothing we could do, but at first light, we woke up and went out in search wherever we could do so by also being safe. We caught one glimpse of her during the day, but then we lost her again. And that entire day we kept looking, and finally, just as it was getting dark, we found her curled up in a field not far from a gate, by herself, too tired to keep up with the herd anymore. After all, she was only 24 hours old, and we had no idea she even got any of her mom's first milk. We secured the field, and Ted went in and scooped her up. We put her in the back of our SUV and drove her down to our house and put her in a little room off of our woodshed, and we sat with her through the night, taking turns to be with her, trying to get her to take a bottle. And she would lean up against us and lay her head on our legs. The warmth and security worked both ways. It just fed our souls in so many ways. She was building trust with us, and we were grateful to give her a chance at survival. Indeed, there was great rejoicing when she grew in strength. And a year later, we introduced her back to the herd, a healthy 1-year-old. And when we sold our herd a few years ago, she was the hardest to let go. The connection that we shared with her was deep in trust and safety. Her first spring on her new farm, she gave birth to her third calf, and they sent us pictures. She was lost and then found because we wouldn't and we couldn't give up. Naturally, we called her Grace. Jesus reinforces this story of God's compassion and love and celebration when we find what we have lost in the story of the woman who lost one of her 10 coins, precious to her, no doubt. And so she turned her house upside down to find it. And when she did, she rejoiced and she invited others in to celebrate that with her in her joy. Well, these parables imply the depth with which God seeks us out and yearns for a relationship with us, never ever giving up. And Jesus telling them was for all who were gathered around him, the Pharisees and the scribes included. For while they may not have thought that they needed that, they were devoted to God. And yet Jesus implies that they too had lost their way. Whether they picked up on that, we don't know, and perhaps that had a lot to do with their total rejection of him down the road, because of the discomfort of facing their own truth. They were among the lost themselves. We all are in some way. When the parables reflect, while the parables reflect the great pleasure God has in the return of those who had lost their way, it is also about the joy both the shepherd and the woman find in restoring their sense of completeness. Prior to their losses, their lives were full, and they were content with what they had. But when loss entered into their lives, they worked day and night to find the restoration that made them whole. And in that way, we align ourselves with God. For in that wholeness, we become our best selves. And living our best selves fosters community, which brings celebration in heaven and on earth. Have you ever felt lost? Not sure what to do next? Where to turn? How to get there? Have you felt an incompleteness? That something's missing, unsatisfying, and unfulfilling? I imagine we all have been there and perhaps are in this very moment, trying to find a way back to fullness, the fullness that we are after. I'm sure this is true on a personal level, and I know this is true on a grander level in our world today. As a society, we have lost our sense of security, our trust in others. Our sense of hope is challenged, our sense of direction. We fear expressing our differences. We're afraid of such dialogue outside of the circles that we deem safe. And those seem to be getting a little bit smaller all the time. You know what I'm talking about. We tend to walk carefully, speak more quietly, choose safety over boldness, and stay away from anything that might trigger backlash. It's true. But what is also true is how the loss of freedom to be ourselves, who we are without fear and judgment, leaves us in a place of incompleteness from which we are ultimately unsatisfied and discontent. We need to seek ways to retrieve what we have lost, to search for how we can be humanity together in better and more perfect ways, to boldly turn over every stone, look in every corner, high and low, until we find what it means to be complete again, to feel safe and loved, to live openly without prejudice, to recognize that not only have we lost what is precious to our well-being, but we are all in some ways lost ourselves. Can we? Will we join hand in hand and journey together toward harmony and peace. I distinctly remember after 9/11, and I know many of you do as well, how churches and religious spaces throughout the globe were filled to standing room only. In Mystic, where I was a senior pastor, we had 400 people. The capacity was about 350. We had 400 people standing and sitting to be together in that place, all searching for answers, searching for what was lost on that tragic day. And I have to say, I kind of wonder why our churches are not as filled to capacity today after tragic events happen. Has our society become numb? Have we lost our way? For some time following 9/11, people worked side by side across diversities to be one humanity, working together. But like other times, it faded away. We got back to our busy lives and moved forward. And I would say not fully healed. The wounds from all of these acts of violence leave scars just beneath the surface. And maybe because these things happen again and again is why we're not filled to capacity today. But I'm glad you're here. Some might say there is a human propensity toward judgment and division. And there is some truth to that when we ourselves are not whole, when we are not whole. When we feel incomplete, we tend to judge in order to put ourselves in a better light. If I point out the flaws in you, then I feel a little bit better, right? I don't have to look at the flaws in myself. But in truth, our faith tells us that we are created in the image and the spirit of our Creator, our God, which is all-encompassing love. And that is in us from the very beginning. What we need going forward, more passionately than ever, is to live into that truth, to lean into our faith in God and in humanity, to enlarge our circles of love, to take that risk in boldness. Lift that up. Maybe lift that up as who we truly are, and celebrate every moment in which we turn toward hope and peace. Every moment we find our way back into relationship with our Creator, with one another, and with all creation. May we hold one another closer than ever as we strive ever forward to recover what we have lost. And may we celebrate our oneness every step of the way. Blessings and peace. Amen.